second. We're nearly there. 3, 2, 1. We're live. And if you're at all interested in the environment, you're going to want to watch this to the end. Hand over to Charles Appleby. Go for it, Charles.
Hello and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us. We've got a really exciting program today. We've got so many interruptions coming up that I don't know quite what's going to happen, but we're starting with two young people who are in the green zone at COP26. And then we're going to move on to some other people joining us, maybe from the march in London and from outside in the city in Glasgow as well. But what this is COP Win or COP Out, live updates from COP26. We're getting people who are there to talk to us. We've got two young people here, and we're just going to start off with some introductions. I'll just do myself first of all. So my name is Charles Appleby. I'm the founder of noco2.org. So we plant trees. By Christmas, we're really hoping to have planted 500,000 trees total. And the trees are creating paid work for people in extreme poverty, and they're creating new habitats for wildlife. So this event is voluntary. If anybody would like to make a donation, that would be most welcome. So £20 will plant 180 trees for you, or you can plant more trees. But let's hand over, first of all, to the young people we've got today. So they are from the School Sustainability Network. And so let's start off. Natalia, would you like to go first? Introduce yourself.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Natalia. I currently live in Berkshire, so I go to boarding school, but I'm Spanish, so I've grown up in Spain my whole life, and I only just moved to England. So I've always been very interested in climate change, and I think now more than ever, I'm starting to realize that I really have to take action and do as much as I can. So that's kind of why I'm here. And yeah.
Fantastic. So really pleased you're bringing an international dimension to us, Natalia. We always try to be as international as possible, don't we, Gary? And so thanks for sharing that you're originally from Spain. So over to Abby.
Hi, I'm Abby. I'm here from Leeds in Yorkshire. I go to Leeds Grammar, and I'm just here because we're really passionate about the climate. So we really realised that this is our chance to get involved, to get climate into schools, to get it into our education.
Fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So look, to start with, would one of you like to just give us a little tour around the background that you're in? Tell us where you are, and just use the camera to show where you are, what's going on.
We're currently at the entrance of the green zone. So I'll just turn the camera on. Yeah. Okay. Should I stand up and move around? Okay.
Sure.
Leave that to you.
Yeah. So this is the entrance. So this is where you'd come in. And then this would be the entrance. This is reception, the information desk, and then this is where you'd start. So there's all the booths to the left, and then there's 2 floors. Would you like to see more of it, or?
No, that's really good. Thank you.
Is that good? Okay.
Thank you, Natalia. That's really excellent.
No
So
problem.
let's hand over then to Abby.
Yes.
So thanks for that, Natalia. Abby, if you can come a little bit closer to the microphone, that would be good. That's great. So, Abby, do you want to tell us a bit about, first of all, tell us, what is this School Sustainability Network program that you're here with? Tell us a bit about that, if you would.
So the UK Sustainable Schools Network is a network connecting the regional collections of schools. So I'm here from the Yorkshire Sustainability Network. We have people from the Avon Network and the London Network. And the idea is that each regional network can work between schools, connect peers, connect the staff to discuss sustainability and to support their local action. And then the network will meet once every term, I believe. We meet online and we discuss what we can really do as a country and have those bigger international objectives.
Wow. So do you want to tell us a bit about what sort of impact the school network has had, or you plan to have over the next little while?
Yes, so I know in my school, we're just starting out. We're only joining the network in the past few months, but we've already started work on getting plastic bottles banned. We're doing some work on rewilding because we're quite a rural school. So we're doing a lot of work on rewilding in that area and supporting biodiversity around us. I know I've heard from other students that they've done work on getting solar panels installed in their school by going through NGOs that support that action. And just a lot of work on raising awareness and action in our own schools.
Okay, that's absolutely amazing. So thank you so much for that. So back over to Natalia.
Yes.
Hi, Natalia. Just want to ask you now, how many days have you been here for, Natalia?
So we arrived Friday afternoon and we're staying until Sunday.
Okay.
So it's 4 days. Oh no,
Great.
we arrived Thursday afternoon.
Thursday.
Sorry.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell me a little bit about the experience? So just give people who aren't here, just give a feel for the sort of experience of being here. I mean, do you feel that history is being made here, or do you feel that it's just a sort of bureaucratic exercise? I mean, tell us a bit about how you feel about it. What's the experience?
I think honestly it's been amazing so far. I've met very interesting people. So I went to a few talks yesterday. I had an interview in the morning. I do think there's change being made. I do feel like there's a lot going on in the Blue Zone as well. And I'm not too sure what's going on there so far. But I feel like that's mainly where the decisions are made and where most change happens. But this is more of where everyone gets together and like there's NGOs, there's people from all over the world. So I attended a panel yesterday, which was very interesting, with 4 young climate change activists from Nepal, Pakistan, Iceland, and Canada. And it was amazing just hearing all the different experiences and how it is for them as climate change activists in each one of their countries. And yeah, I don't know. I've been learning so much, and that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to come, just to be able to educate myself and then educate others in the future, hopefully.
Fantastic. So I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Natalia, to ask you about some high points of this. But let's go over to Abby next.
Yeah.
Hi, Abby. So same question for you. What's your experience here so far? Do you feel history is being made, or do you feel we're not making progress? What's been your experience so far, Abby?
I'd really say it's a big mix. I think being here and being in the green zone is amazing. Just like Natalia said, you speak to so many people who have such a genuine passion for sustainability and generating so many new ideas. But there is also, sadly, there is a feeling with some places that it's a little bit of greenwashing. It might be a bit more talk than action. But I really feel like the entire atmosphere here is just excitement and enthusiasm, and there is just a huge drive for change. And at least I do hope that this will be a huge turning point in history.
Great. Well, let's go straight on then, Abby, to ask you, what do you feel? Obviously, you're really excited about what you've seen. Do you want to tell us a bit about what's been really exciting that you have seen there, Abby?
Yes, so we went to an amazing talk yesterday about policy making and how the younger generation can really be involved with that process. So we spoke to representatives from Wales, who discussed their own action and how they're really pressuring the Welsh government to support equality and to support the youth in all of their actions. And we all just attended an amazing panel discussing system change. It was hosted.
Well, let's come back to that in a minute. But let me just, first of all, we heard here on Wednesday, didn't we, Gary? The first time I've heard this word, youth washing. So, Abby, just while you're talking about that, is this what's happening? Is it youth washing, or are you really being heard?
I'd say I can't speak too much, but from what I've heard from other students who were able to attend the Blue Zone, again, it's quite a mix. They spoke to lots of people who did show real, genuine plans, who showed a lot of enthusiasm for getting the youth involved. But there is also a balance that, because this is a media event, because there is so much attention placed on COP26, it can be a lot more beneficial for some people to just have a young person out in front. And that is happening, but there is also a genuine desire to have young people involved.
Great. Okay, so I mean, here we've had Gary and we've had young people on these events since January. We've had about 3 or 4 events, haven't we, Gary, dedicated to young people. For me, you know, we've just got to hear your voice, because it's a sort of clarity about it and directness that we don't have from a lot of the adults, don't you think, Gary?
I do, and I'm filled with frustration sometimes that when I speak to people about COP26, they say, "What's that?" And it always disappoints me that they don't realise that where they live, it actually has an impact, and that's a big challenge, that young and old don't realise this is a global issue. So I love it that you two are there, and you're making the global issue become local too. Does that frustrate you when you speak to young people and they think, it's never going to affect me, I don't care? How does that make you feel?
Oh, I think it's definitely frustrating. So most people I've spoken to about COP26 don't know what it is. Like older people, young people.
That's right.
I've spoken to so many people and it is very frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, my point on that is that, you know, with I don't want to mention the coronavirus word really, but you know, early on in coronavirus, we had a leaflet through the door which said what was going on. And I just find it, for me, it's incredible that we've not had that leaflet from the government to say, look, this is what's happening. But anyway, we're supposed to be here talking to you. So Natalia, back over to you with the question of, look, what for you has been really, really exciting here? What's the most exciting thing you've seen here?
So that panel that I mentioned was very exciting. That was very interesting. Then I also spoke to Kevin Courtney. So he's the General Secretary of the National Education Union. So I got to speak to him yesterday, and we just spoke about education and how it's very important to educate young people from obviously a very young age, and how climate change should be introduced to the curriculum. And yeah, how I just think that's very important. And I loved seeing him being so involved in everything. And he seemed very, very interested, which I like, because most people aren't. Yeah.
Now, we've had, Gary, we've had young people on this panel multiple times this year saying how important education is. And one of the really great messages that came over from the young people is to say, look, we need education for primary schools, secondary schools, and for adults as well. So it's not just for schools. So I was really amazed to see the announcement just this week from the Education Secretary about his plan to have, he's going to introduce education in schools, in primary schools and secondary schools. So do you want to just tell us, Natalia, a little bit about your take on that?
Yeah, so I think it's a great idea. So I think that was going to be introduced by 2023. So I personally love seeing because lots of people make promises, but they tend to be empty promises. So they say that they're going to do so many things and then they never actually do them. But I think by setting a time and a date, it actually seems much more real. And I think that is quite inspiring and hopeful. And I think it's a great idea. And let's hope that it actually happens. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Natalia, and ask you about the difference between the UK and Spain. But let's go back over to Abby for the moment. So, Abby, you were really fired up about this talk you've been to. Was that the most exciting thing you've seen here at COP26, or do you want to tell us first about something else?
I'd say just for now, that's been the most exciting thing so far, but everything here is really amazing.
Okay, so tell us about it. What was exciting, Abby?
So it was a discussion on system change and how we utilize that for a more regenerative future. So there were people there speaking from Patagonia and Ecosia, talking about work with replanting trees and with really supporting Indigenous peoples. And I think we both heard a lot of things that were really surprising, that discussions about a situation in Kinshasa where a woman had been there and she'd been looking in the supermarkets and seen that the food there was all shipped in from Belgium, but walked a few kilometers down the street and found people there growing local produce who were really suffering in poverty, but they weren't being given that opportunity. They weren't being given support. And discussing how to really link those two things, that we can't deal with climate change without supporting the people who are most in need.
That's amazing. So just come a bit nearer to the microphone, Abby. But that's amazing. I mean, we worry here about air miles. We worry about our food products that are being shipped by air to the UK and all that sort of thing. But it's unbelievable that food products are being shipped to...
Charles, two big supermarkets announced today that the things that we're going to be buying from the supermarkets will have a sustainability ethic around it, that if we're getting things overly packaged or systems being allowed to come in. So I really welcome that. I think that's brilliant.
Gary, I've got to interrupt you. Can you put on David Jones?
Yes, of course.
Don't go away, Natalia and Abby. Stay on the line. But we've just got an interruption from David, who's coming in. We'll speak to David next and then come straight back to you, Abby. So, David, are you there?
He's there. He's coming in. All right, here we go. Come on, David. There you go.
Hey.
Hi, David.
Hello.
Well, great that you're joining us. The umbrella's telling us everything. Okay.
Right. I can see that I'm steamed up as well, which is absolutely perfect. Because
it's no worries at all. Okay. So just for everybody on the webinar, David is outdoors in Glasgow. So David, just start off by telling us a bit about who you are, where you are, and what's going on. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody, and welcome. It is a beautiful Glasgow lunchtime here. I'm in George Square. I'll give you a little spin around what you can see. It's pretty quiet here at the moment, but there's a lot of police and the Socialist Workers' Party tent because the main climate march of the entire week is due to come through in about an hour or so. So I think there's a sense of anticipation here with Greta leading from the front. Hopefully, I mean, they expected 100,000 people, but as you can probably tell, the weather is absolutely awful. And I think I might dampen things down a little bit. This is the main square in Glasgow. It's a pretty impressive, place. And, but it's looking pretty miserable today.
Okay. So David, tell us about your, what's your experience at COP? What's your message for us?
Right. Glasgow's done a great job of hosting it. It is real melting pot of all sorts of cultures. So I've met people from all over the world in the last few days. I came up on Wednesday for the Finance Day, and I'm leaving today. Today's Nature Day, attending various events and so on. Just a little a bit about me. I formed a company 6 months ago called CO2 Eco, which is aiming to bring price nature capital properly. So my big thing, why I was here for the Finance Days and the Nature Days, is to try and influence and find out a little bit more about how we really will value nature and price nature properly into our economy. I mean, the people on this call don't need any education about it. We are not valuing the externalities in society, and that's why we're in the bloody mess we're in. So now there have been some great announcements, and I think there's been. I get the tone of modest caution about this COP. There have been some promises made by governments around the rainforests. You will have read them all: rainforests, methane, and other things that directly affecting nature-based services, which is great. What we haven't is real, tangible actions to deliver some of those promises. So they might say that they want to spend X amount of money on rainforest protection, but how does that actually work? So I'll give you an example of the frustration. I attended an event at 8 a.m. this morning with Citibank, and they did a wonderful presentation, including Sir David King, who heads up a number of really important initiatives, global initiatives, and that most of you probably have heard of him. It was very erudite, and they were talking about the ways in which you can measure biodiversity really accurately now using remote sensing and so on, and geospatial data. But what was missing, and the question I asked and they couldn't answer, was how do you create biodiversity as an asset class so that private capital and the capital markets drive money into protecting the rainforest? Because we all know those rainforests need to be worth more left in place and protected than chopped down. And at the moment, that's not the case in the capital markets. So, my message, I think, is, in summary, some great talk being done. It is a little bit of Greta's blah, 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 but there are some great international commitments being made. But what is missing are the ways to enact it. And I think what we should all be watching out for in the coming few days is what progress is made negotiating Section 6, Article 6 of the Paris Agreement, which is where the nationally determined contributions are, the mechanisms and taxonomies to enforce those nationally determined contributions to emissions reduction, how they will be enforced. That's what we've got to look out for in the next few days.
Super. David, thank you so much for joining us. We'll let you get back to your important meeting. And even more important, we need you to keep asking the question, what's going to keep rainforests standing rather than being cut down? And we're expecting you to have answers by the end of next week. Okay, David?
And then we go back to education too, that people don't realise by reducing the amount of beef that they eat, that actually has an impact on the rainforest. Simple conversations can really, really help.
But but what David's talked about is so critical that the way to drive money into nature-based solutions so that it makes it more valuable to grow and keep trees standing than to cut them down. So David, thank you so much for that contribution. Have a great day.
I'm going to get back in the warm now.
Oh,
okay.
And windy.
Great. And
the life of an activist. Good for you.
Back over to Natalia and Abby. So thank you so much for waiting for that message from David. So Natalia, back to yourself. Obviously, the situation in the UK, we're pretty isolated really from a lot of the climate change issues. I mean, someone of my age and Gary, we've seen summers and winters change. I mean, the biggest change for me in the UK is the winters. I mean, we used to have horrible, snowy, icy, terrible winters, and now we just have those occasionally. But in Spain, you've got a different weather profile, and I think you've had the fires, and you've had. Well, tell us about what the situation is in Spain.
Yeah.
Is Spain much more exposed to climate problems than we are here in the UK?
I wouldn't say much more, but compared to the UK, it is more noticeable. So I think Spain is going to be the first country in Europe to be 100% desert. So
desert?
Yeah,
really?
so it's suffering gentrification. Yeah.
When's it going to be desert, Natalia?
So I can't remember the date exactly, but the south of Spain especially is becoming a desert slowly. And
Wow.
yes, there have been fires. Summers are getting to extreme temperatures. So I live in Madrid, and during the summer, I can't leave my house. So I always go somewhere else because I just can't stay in Madrid because it's so hot.
So what sort of temperatures are we talking about then?
So it does get up to like mid-40s maybe.
Wow. I mean, just so people understand, I didn't know this until I think it was about a year ago, but the world average temperature is 16 degrees. Okay, so there's obviously extreme variations. It's 0, minus or whatever in Antarctica, and then plus 30, plus 35, or whatever in places like Singapore. But the fact is that Singapore exists at an average temperature of plus 12 above the world average temperature. The world average is 16, so in Singapore it's 28, 30 degrees. So they're very happy living in plus 12 because they've got aircon. But certainly 45 degrees. So how's the day work then, Natalia? What actually do you do when it's 45 degrees? When do you do your shopping? When do you see your friends? What happens?
You can't. So I think what most people do is if you're lucky enough to have a swimming pool, then you spend the day at the swimming pool. And if you don't, then you just stay at home and have air conditioning on all day, which is also very negative for the environment as well.
But what time does the temperature drop? I mean, does it drop in the evening so you can go out?
No, so it doesn't. It never drops. It can go down to it tends to go down during the night to 30 degrees maybe, but it's still horribly hot. Yeah.
It's amazing. And so just help us here, Natalia. So Madrid's in the center of Spain, sort of.
Yes.
But you talk about southern Spain going to desert. Well, isn't southern Spain where all these wonderful fruits and vegetables that we get to eat in the UK supermarkets? Isn't that where they all come from?
Yeah, most of them do. Yeah, from the south of Spain. So I guess because of globalization, when one country is affected by climate change, other countries will be affected by it as well. So yeah.
But I mean, to grow all those vegetables, we need those fruits and vegetables, and they need water. So how's all that going to work?
I don't know. That's why we need to take action, I guess.
Great.
Because this can't keep happening. Yeah.
Well, look, I'll leave it to you to ask the hard questions of of people while you're there, and then let's come back over to Abby now.
Okay.
So Abby, we got interrupted? Sorry, in the middle of system change. Tell us a bit more about that, please.
Charles, can I ask a quick question? Both of you guys are there, and you've got a mentor called Gemma. Do you want to just say a few words about Gemma's, how she mentors you, how she guides you? Because she's the one that's introduced us. I'd love to know.
Wait, I didn't understand the question.
You're there with Gemma. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
her involvement in mentoring you and helping you along the way.
Yeah. Do you wanna? Okay. Wait. Sorry.
There you go.
Hey, so we've got a bunch of teachers. There's about 6 of us that have brought 20 students over to COP. We're part of the network that's trying to reach across the whole country. So we're UKSSN. So it was started by Dr. Jess Tipton in London. She set up the London network, and it was so successful that we branched out. I'm representing Hampshire, and we're so grateful to be here. We're having an absolute ball. We managed to get some students into the blue zone, which was no mean feat. And we've gone over to the climate hub as well. So we're trying to have a really big reach.
Fantastic. So Gemma, we're going to ask you to come back on a bit later, but for the moment, let's try and get back to Abby and the question about Abby talking about, here we are again, third time lucky Abby talking about system change. Go for it.
Go for it.
It's really what we were already saying. It's just so many examples of ways that we can support local people, support Indigenous people who already have a lot of the skills to support us, to help us through this crisis. And that the fact that the systems that we have in place, the government policies that are in place don't give us that ability. We don't have the current setup to handle this crisis. And it's just an amazing discussion of all of the ways that we can work as individuals and through networks to really build that change and to get that public support.
Okay. So a lot of the discussion's been quite technical about 1.5 degrees, about energy, reducing CO2 emissions, all these sorts of things. But what Gary and I have experienced all the way through this year in terms of the discussions and the messages is that there's a huge resistance of people to taking action. So from you coming from the more of the sort of psychology background of all of this, what's your take on the psychology of getting people involved and these issues of responsibility? I mean, aren't we all responsible for the situation we're in and helping to get out of it? What's your take on that, Abby?
I think it can be a real mix of things. I know part of it for me was there was a long period of almost apathy, this feeling that it was so overwhelming and that it was so much of a problem that I couldn't do anything. And so I think part of it can be speaking to people about that feeling that it can be guilt or anxiety that makes people not want to act, not want to look into the part that they have in this crisis. But I think I was going to say something that you've already mentioned is that we're not as affected in the UK. And as Natalia said, there are countries that are suffering much more. And so another aspect is just seeing that, having that empathy for other people, which I think is really lacking right now, is the feeling for all of the people who are suffering because of us, because of our actions.
So just come a bit nearer to the microphone. But in terms of going forward then, what do you think could be different in terms of messaging this more effectively?
I think we just really need to get on people's own level and speak to them as individuals. We have a lot of sort of top-down discussions about how, as a country, we're going to cut our emissions, but speaking about what that means for people and what that means in your own life, and not just the basics of, okay, well, we need you to recycle, or that is important, but discussing the bigger things that people can do.
That's fantastic, Abby. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so let's come back over to Natalia. So Natalia, in the rest of your time here, what are you going to be doing? What are you going to be particularly looking out for, Natalia?
So I think just in general, so I don't know if we've mentioned this, but there's booths all along the green zone where you get like different NGOs and lots of people speaking about different topics within climate change, which is very interesting. So just getting to talk to everyone and learning as much as I can, meeting people, and yeah, I think that's my main goal for now. Yeah.
And I hope you're going to be telling people about the southern Spain becoming a desert, because that's new to me. That news needs to be broadcast around. So thank you so much for that. If you can just let Gemma know, we're going to ask Gemma to come on in a minute. But over to Abby. Hi, Abby. So again, same question for you. In terms of the rest of your time here, what are you going to be focusing on?
Again, talking to people, but really I want to focus on things I can take back to Yorkshire and my own network. So I've already seen a lot of setups that I'm very interested to go talk to you, discussing the role of peatlands and seagrass and all of the things that we can encourage in our own area and our own habitats to help sequester carbon and lower our own emissions.
Okay, so Yorkshire, you're just reminding me, the phosphate mine in Yorkshire, that sort of whole thing's gone away now, hasn't it?
I'm afraid I can't speak too much on that. I'm not very aware of it, I'm afraid.
Okay, all right, we'll leave that one then. Okay, so I'm just going to come back in a minute to ask you for a summary. So over to Natalia. So any final words from you before we hand over to Gemma?
Any final words? I'm not too sure. I don't know. Do you have any other questions?
I have one last question for you both. If I were to hand you a magic wand and you had 2 wishes, maybe 3, what would they be? You could grant them right now.
So one of them would be to educate everyone, so all ages, just so everyone can be aware of climate change, because I think that can make a real impact, because we can't change what we don't know. So that would definitely be one of them. Maybe another one would be for politicians to actually do what they're promising. That would be a good one. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, that's Natalia's magic. We can't change what we don't know. The education question has come up, the plea for this has come up so many times. Maybe we are getting action. And so maybe the thing is now the focus on really what that education is going to be about and make sure it's having an impact. But I love that phrase, we can't change what we don't know. So that's the title of your clip for this one, Natalia. Thank you so much for joining us. Over to Abby.
Yes.
Abby. Gary, ask the magic wand question.
Yeah. What would be if we were to hand you a magic wand? What would you wish? It comes true.
I mean, I definitely agree with what Natalia said about getting politicians to really follow through on what they've said already. I think part of there's also consumers. I think I would probably just wish for people to have the opportunities to make a difference. That we have that a lot in the UK, we have that a lot in the West, but that across the world, there isn't that equality, there isn't that chance to do things. And so I think it's quite a cliche answer, but when we talk about world peace or the end of poverty, if we're really looking at the big picture, those are things we need to think about.
I love that.
Super.
Can you two young people do me a favour? If you see the China representative, he was on the news yesterday. He looks so miserable. Will you give him some love? He just looks absolutely beaten up, and I just think we need them on board. We need China, so go like that to him, or I don't recommend you give him a hug, but just show him some love, because he looked like the most miserable man on the planet.
So great point, Gary. Yeah, over a bit of action for you there. So thank you so much, Natalia and Abby, for joining us. It's been absolutely amazing. You guys have a great rest of your time here at COP26. And if you'd like to hand us back to Gemma, that'd be terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you.
Oh, they're lovely.
Gemma, what a star team you've got here. Oh, and tell us who's that character. No, stay there. Who's that character in the background?
He's a womble, cleaning up the environment.
What's he doing?
I don't know, he's educating, he's meeting the people, he's hobnobbing.
Okay. So, Gemma, thank you so much for giving us the time with these two absolutely wonderful young people you've had there. But tell us a bit about your experience there, Gemma. What's COP26 been for you?
Oh, we've just had a brilliant time. I think going around all the different stalls, seeing what everybody's doing, it gives you a bit more hope. But I think the panels, the talks and discussions have been brilliant. I think what's the main thing I'm going to take forward is having heard from the girl from Patagonia, who's talking about challenging your supply chains and making sure that you're challenging them to be more responsible. And it made me think that when I go back to my school, we have such an influence. We've got, we deal with a lot of businesses. I would like them to surprise and delight us and allow us to get them to take a bit more responsibility. And if we're finding we're asking them about their supply chains, then everything's just going to expand and expand. So I think I've got a lot of work to do when we get back.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, I've sat on multiple webinars where big companies have talked about what they're doing with their supply chain. So, big manufacturers who manufacture, for example, in Vietnam, they're going into the factories in Vietnam, and clearly they're telling them what they expect in terms of cutting CO2, cutting use of water, cutting use of energy, and they're helping them to do it by means of helping them with solar panels and the technology to do all of this. So fantastic that you're planning on doing the same with your wonderful school in Hampshire. And that's absolutely the way. If everyone does that, I mean, everyone's talking about us as consumers, not to buy stuff in plastics, to demand of supermarkets that they change, not to buy stuff with massive air miles. If we all do that down the supply chain, it's going to have a huge impact. And if you're talking to you're getting your head teacher to implement this with the school, with the purchasing power that you have and the influence you have with parents as well, that's absolutely amazing. But Gemma, tell us something else. What else have you found there?
Well, there's a lot of stands that are trying to give people helpful, useful things that they can do when they get home. And so I went to a store yesterday, and they're trying to make it all interactive, which is lovely. And there were these two huge tap sculptures, and they were thinking about the water usage. And they were asking us, if we're washing our hands, do you think it's more important to be would you tend to use the hot water or the cold water to wash your hands? What do you think is a sensible thing? And a lot of people are thinking, right, hot water, and it's going to be killing the bugs, and that's going to help me wash my hands more effectively. But actually, we learned that cold water, there's no difference between the effectiveness of the wash if you're using the cold water, and it stops you from waiting for it to heat up.
Wow.
So I thought that was a very, very small, very succinct change that we can really bring back when we're there. Like an easy message for people to grasp.
So there's a change in message there. I remember being an 11-year-old, quite naive to the world. First, we went to home economics, if you remember what that is. And there was a poster there. It said, wash your hands with warm water. And so that message has completely changed. And how many other messages have changed? That's amazing.
Yeah. So, Gemma, that's such an important message. I mean, it's one of these things we always, most of the world, most of the England probably we wash our hands with warm water because we're used to doing that. But something that I think is really important that I've cut out is that in any public space or any company, there always seems to be an electric hand dryer. So maybe it's by law there has to be an electric hand dryer. But for me, by the time I've walked about 20 yards, my hands are dry anyway, so that I don't need that electric hand dryer.
Charles, those electric hand dryers are full of bacteria. There's studies been done that they can make matters worse. Something else, while we're on water, that we can do, what we put down the toilet and the sink is so important. If you're a contact lens wearer, putting contact lenses down the sink is amazingly bad for the environment. And there's other things that we shouldn't put down the toilet. Please be mindful of that.
Wow.
Okay.
Going to change locations. We've got bands that's kicked.
So, Gemma, just very quickly on that point, the small points like this about, you know, using cold water instead of warm water, the small points, turning the lights off, these are all good. But I think what's really, really important is that people do need to think about moving up the sort of the value chain. You know, the impact of warm water rather than cold, the impact of recycling. They are quite low relative to the big things. So that the big things like, you know, turning down the central heating, thinking about driving, thinking about in time getting an electric car. These things are such big impact. But do you want to tell us about something else, Gemma, or you need to go?
Well, I think the big things, what I really want to see and what I want to see a lot more of is businesses making some changes. So I was really happy to see.
Gemma, did you say businesses making changes? Did you say businesses?
Yes, absolutely. So the people can try all the little domestic things that we do. We can make our small impact, which is important. Unless we have proper change from the top and big businesses that are making huge profits, what we need is those guys to be pulling their weight. So we need to see the circular economy kicking in. I haven't heard a lot of the circular economy going on around here. I have challenged a couple of businesses that I've seen, and a couple of them are starting to use Loop, which is a business that's rather than using disposable packaging, you give it back to the company and they refill it, it's a good start. But businesses really need to be taking on like the lion's share of what's going on here. They're the ones that are like in profit. So I want to see the responsibility on them. I want to see the circular economy take hold.
Yeah. Gemma, that's such an important point, because when you go into the supermarket and you want to buy a product, you can only buy the products that are on the shelves. And if the products are they're in plastic bottles, and you know, then they're using plastic unnecessarily. The fruit is in plastic boxes. That's all. If that's all they have, then that's all you can buy, and that's absolutely.
And that's why I teach product design. I'm a DT teacher, so I am teaching the new designers that are going out there. If our designers are only making 100% sustainable products with a sensible life cycle assessment that do inform the circular economy, then we're going to be cutting it off at the source. So I'm hoping design will save the world.
Yay!
Wow. Well, Gemma, you've got all these wonderful young activists, and so if you were to focus on design and get your young folks to write to companies about their poor design, then you've got a whole campaign there, haven't you, Gemma? But Gemma, thank you so much for joining us. It's been an amazing day, hasn't it, Gary? You've done a terrific job with the young people, Natalia and Abby. That was just outstanding. Gemma, any final words from you before you go?
Oh, I'd like to leave on a message of hope. There's a lot that's going on. There's a buzz that's been building, and I think you have to have hope in order to create that action.
Super. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Take care.
Thanks,
Bye.
Gemma. Bye. So, Gary.
Yes.
What an amazing.
Wasn't that lovely to hear those young people and an inspiring teacher passing on the message down the line? I think that was wonderful.
So terrific. So look, just in the last few minutes, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the news. Do you want to talk?
Monday things kicked off. We had all the bigwigs from America come over, and the presidents. We missed the Queen, which I think wasn't as big a deal as people made out. And India made the climate change target of 270. Now, I'm no expert, Charles, as you know, you are my mentor, but 270 to go 50% new, they want 50% renewable energy by 230, zero by 270. Isn't that too late?
Gary, it is too late. I mean, what I'm seeing so far with COP generally, I mean, the news from John Kerry, I think, who's the American top negotiator on this, is that he's not happy with what's happened this week. I think what I see happening this week is that we've taken 2 steps forward on some of this stuff, but we've also taken a step back. So punches have been pulled, and so it's very easy with these announcements. You know, you announce 10 gigawatts of wind and everybody says clap, everybody claps, whatever. But how much wind do you actually need? I mean, if you need 100 gigawatt of wind, then 10 gigawatts not enough. And the other thing with wind is that only some of it is actually in action. So that there was a day last week when the UK's got 24 gigawatts of wind capacity. One day there was 12 gigawatts of wind actually being generated, energy from wind, and then the next day there was 1. So you know, if you've got 100 gigawatts of capacity and you've got a bad day, it's still only going to be turning over at 2 or 3 gigawatts. That's why
we need a good mix.
That's right.
Of everything.
So as I say, for me, it's been about 2 steps forward. India committing to go 50% renewable energy, and at the end of the day, I've looked it up. India has over double the solar energy per square meter that the UK does on average.
So by putting people there, Charles.
Putting a solar panel into India has a massive impact compared to what we have here. But then they've not done enough with 2070. It's not enough. It's not compliant. I mean, I would say it's just not compliant.
It's a bit of a wimp out there. Methane was also on everyone's lips on Monday. Some nice easy wins. It was sad to hear that when an oil rig finishes up and wraps up, some greedy managing director goes insolvent, and then it's nobody's problem. And that certainly we're going to need to tackle that. Tuesday.
Yeah, Gary, just to comment on that one.
Yeah, please.
In the UK, we've had this wonderful atoll protection scheme. So we've had this in the UK for years. If your holiday company supplier goes bankrupt, you get your money back and you can come home, right? In the US, with all these oil wells, same thing needs to apply. The chance of someone taking oil and gas out of the ground, the chances of them going bankrupt is quite high. They need to have their own protection scheme. So if you're going to be allowed to dig a hole in the ground and get gas out of it, then if you do go under, then there needs to be a way that someone comes around and plugs that well for you.
Well, the solution was they have to raise a bond before they even start, and that bond stays in a fixed account. Lovely. This is great stuff. So Tuesday, over 100 countries agreed they would reduce methane by 30%. On Wednesday, what happened on Wednesday, Charles? Anything interesting? Let's just see.
Was that the Stopping Deforestation Day, was it, Gary?
Yes, absolutely. You tell us about that on Wednesday.
Well, that's one of these things. I think a lot of people are very pleased. We've had people on air here, haven't we, Gary, saying that it is different this time. So people saying it is different this time. But the concern is with this is that there's been talk about stopping deforestation for 10 years or more. What I don't understand is why we have to wait till 2030. It's so important. It's creating so much CO2. Why aren't we stopping deforestation by 2025 at the latest and stopping it as soon as possible?
What's encouraging is that there's so many things happening around the world, and because we've got these webinars, you've actually created this wonderful place. We get to speak to people in New York. Like, who would have thought? In New York, they're planting millions of trees. Things are happening. It's just maybe not fast enough. We need to go faster. And Charles, again, we plug no CO2. There's never been an easier way to plant trees. we plant trees, it reduces the carbon in the environment. So please, we'll put in the show notes how you can donate. If you're a business out there and you're thinking, well, how can I contribute? Well, just a tiny small portion of your profit towards planting trees. Charles, you want to tell us about the Eden Project and before we go on to Thursday?
So Gary, by Christmas, we should have, with noco2.org, we should have planted 500,000 trees. We need to plant a lot more. The world needs 1 trillion trees. Our tree planting partner has now planted over 700 million trees. It's 10 trees for a pound. So if you'd like to make a donation of £20, 180 trees, or £100, then we're on to 900 trees. But we need so many trees, and to go carbon neutral for one person, we need to plant 1,750
trees. So I've never
trees.
been embarrassed of showing my lack of knowledge. When we talk about a tree that's been there 50 years, 100 years, 200 years, like, is that more effective than, say, a tree that's a year old?
Well, the point about trees that are already there, Gary, is that the tree of 50, 70, 100 years old, people are looking at it and they're getting their chainsaw ready to cut it down. That's the problem. So the impact of cutting down ancient forests, established forests, obviously there's people who are growing trees on a cyclical basis. They're growing trees for paper. The trees are being grown, they're being cut down, they're being replanted, etc. That's a different situation. It's people coming into places like my background, which is cloud forest. People coming in, the real huge danger is people coming in, cutting down this cloud forest. The huge benefit of new planting trees is that there is so much land that's been deforested that those trees that are being replanted now are going into land that was deforested. That the trees we're planting are mainly for posterity, and for all the years that those trees are growing, that 20 or 30 years while those trees are growing in the tropics, they are removing CO2. Once they come to steady state, they do keep removing CO2, but not at the same rate. So that really is the issue, Gary.
When I look at coal mines, certainly in Poland, it's a blight on the environment, because they're not burying it. They're changing the whole landscape of the environment. Wednesday, the news didn't talk too much about this, but Japan has added 100 billions towards global climate change. Maybe we can learn a little bit more about that. And Thursday, global coal to clean power stations. So over 100 countries agreed to phase coal out by 2030. Now that doesn't sound too far away. Is that again too late?
It's good because coal is the most polluting of the fossil fuels. China burns more coal than the rest of the world put together. And to my mind, it is too slow. It is too late. But the announcement we had on Friday, I think, is really, really exciting, which is that China is committing $414 billion to building 150 nuclear power plants over the next 15 years. So again, we just need to have some caution around that, Gary, because to achieve what's planned by 2030, the world is going to need 50 or 100% more electricity. So the announcement on nuclear is really good, but if it's all additional capacity and China does not cut down coal, then it's one of these examples of 2 steps forward and 1 step back. We have to get rid of the fossil fuels, and we have to put enough renewables and alternative capacity in place to replace what we have now, and to give us 50 to 100% more than we have now. It's as simple as that.
Well, Charles, would you be as authentic as to make a pledge ourselves and say that, do you think that we could double the amount of donations that we got this year to next year? I think it's achievable, if not triple, because when I first started with you 2 years ago, in the newspaper, you were lucky if you saw one article 2 years ago on the environment. And that, I've seen such a huge change, and it's because of activists like yourself and bringing this to the foreground that this is happening. I think more and more people are going to start to understand their impact on the environment, on when they throw some rubbish on the floor, choosing to put it in the recycle bin, and as simple as that, or turning the lights off, or making best use of a jumper rather than, it's a crime to throw it in the bin. Like, how about giving it to the charity shop?
So Gary, the reason we planted, or the reason we will have planted 500,000 trees by Christmas is because I've contributed some, you've contributed some. But what we're doing here, what you and I are doing, is we're facilitating, we're making it easy for other people to get involved. So the almost all of the money has come from people with their generous donations. We're facilitating. We're here, Gary, you and I, we're here to serve people, to make it easy for people to get involved and do something. And there's so much, as you've heard today from the young people, from Gemma, there's so much needs to be done. Everybody needs to do stuff. They need to wash their hands in cold water, turn the lights off, do the recycling, and then build up that value chain.
Now,
Think
Charles,
about all the other stuff.
It's always lovely to get a live question, and I hope I say the gentleman's name right. Powin. His question is: UK government is in the process of renewing a new coal mine in Cumbria. Well, that was controversial. This is at the time of hosting COP26. Any insight on this issue? Question mark.
I think that we all know coal has to be closed down. I don't know, to be honest, Gary, I don't know the latest at COP26 about this. All I would say is that if people are going to make claims for special exceptions, and they will, so Norway's going to say we need to pump more gas from Norway instead of getting it from Russia. There's going to be exceptions, maybe for the right reasons. All I would say that if we are going to have additional coal from the UK, if we're going to have additional gas from Norway, it doesn't matter what it is, there has to be something that's taken. There has to be a brick. For every additional brick that's put in, there has to be a brick or two taken out of that system to equivalent. Otherwise, we just keep adding to the massive problem.
That's a brilliant question. That's a brilliant answer. What I'd like to hear ringing in my ear is no more carbon neutral, but carbon positive. Wouldn't that be nice?
That's great. And that's what trees can achieve for us, Gary.
That's what trees can achieve. There's another question. The details are missing from the big announcements. For example, 500 GW of capacity is different from consumption.
Well, it depends what sort of energy it is. If you're talking about solar and wind, absolutely. So the numbers on just people understand, 500 gigawatts capacity for wind, it depends how much wind there is on that day. I mean, open the window, look outside. Probably you don't live in a great area for wind, but the thing's the same. If there's no wind in the North Sea where the wind turbines are, then there's going to be nothing coming through the turbines. So the key thing is the average numbers. So the average numbers for 500 gigawatts or whatever, the average number is I'm not sure whether you divide by 3 or you divide by 6. I'm not sure, but you can still have a day when there's nothing. So when on a day there's nothing, what do? Does everybody not use the kettle on that day? Do we have do we put up with what other countries have, which is no energy? That's where the thing gets tricky. As you increase the percentage of renewable solar or wind, the problem gets worse. So you can have 20 or 30% solar or wind, and it doesn't matter. But I think we've all got to maybe face up to having some sort of way of storing electricity. So we're maybe storing overnight and using during the day, and then when there is a lot of wind, that's when we really go for it.
So in the last moments of this broadcast, if you're watching, you could do something by pressing the share button. That will educate all your friends and relatives and your social media friends about the noco2.org. It's never been easier to plant more trees. Now, I'd love to share with you, if you've never watched this before, some fascinating information. Charles happens to know how many trees, if you live in the UK, you would have to plant in a lifetime. So we're gonna possibly, if you don't mind, Charles, ending on that statistic, and then we'll say have a lovely weekend to everyone.
If you're average, you're an average energy consumption person in the UK, then each of us need to plant 1,750 trees. That's a one time, and those trees will then remove 7 tons of CO2 for every year. And that's why, on average, and that's why you need to plant 1,750. So I didn't want people to be saying to me, look, you've not planted enough trees. So myself, my wife and I each planted 3,500 trees. So plant as many as you can. 1,750 trees we can plant for you for a price of £187. Just plant as many as you can. You can plant some more next year, or you can pay instead. You can make a donation monthly.
So there you
Whatever
go.
you can do helps. It all helps.
Be guilt-free, plant some trees, maybe get that rusty old bike from the shed and pop down to the shops on your feet or the bike. Educate your children on putting an extra layer on rather than turning up the heating. There are trillions of things that we can do. Charles, I love asking this question. COP26, is it going the way you want it to? Can we keep up the momentum? Can we keep 1.5 alive?
I'm going to keep 1.5 alive, Gary. It's so critical. This week, as John Kerry said, we haven't done enough. More needs to be done next week. But Gary, we're going to be back here next week on Wednesday, Friday and Saturday. We're going to be having the news live. Saturday, hopefully, will be a catch-up day. Maybe it will be good news if negotiations roll on into Sunday next week. But whatever happens, Gary, we're going to be here. We're going to be promoting the message, how critically important it is to achieve 1.5 max.
Brilliant. Charles, thank you so much for your time. And everyone watching, stay optimistic. It will be okay. We're going to get there.
Thanks for your help, Gary.
Thank you, Charles. Bye, everyone. Okay, the end of the webinar. There you go.